Here in Honolulu, Hawaii, and today is January 29th, 2003. And I thought I would have an interesting topic today. Will communist China go to war with America? Or will America go to war with communist China and others? Not just America. That would be Australia, New Zealand, Germany, different places, Taiwan, Japan, Philippines. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because that's a very important topic. And I've spent many hours studying that. And I've spoken to people who are authorities on that, not just in America, but also in, believe it or not, China. So we're gonna have a little bit of a discussion about that. I will tell you my personal feelings to start off, because as I read different people, I see a lot of different viewpoints on it. Some people say no, nobody, America's not going to go to war. Some will say China is going to go to war with America over Taiwan. Some will say let's avoid it at all costs. Let's try to be friendly to each other. So I think it's a topic that is very controversial. And all I can really do is tell you my opinion. Now, I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian since 1985, a committed Christian. But I always say communism is evil. Anyone who reads my posts, sees my messages going out, that's always included. I included that about 4 years ago because I really felt that was the right thing to do, to make that upfront with people right off the bat. And I'm going to explain why I say that. First of all, China, communist China themselves say that they are communist. They have a communist party in place which controls everything. If you follow the leader's comments, he will say we are communist, but he prefaces it with other statements to make it more palatable for the world. He will say we're a socialist economy, a socialist country, or he will say something like he never says we are not communists. He doesn't say that. He always adds something in. But then if you listen to This Is G and others, if you listen carefully to many comments, you will at times hear him say we are communist. Okay, we have a communist nation, a communist system based upon Leninism. So I have this is not really coming from me that they're communist. This is coming from the leaders of communist China who say that themselves. And then all you have to do is say they have a communist party in place which controls the nation. So, without getting into a discussion of exactly what communism is, because that could be a very long discussion, they just say they're communists. So having said that, when you understand the basic tenets of communism, you understand that one of their tenets is there is no God. That's one of the things that they believe, okay? So as a Christian, we believe in a God. We have a certain belief as to what God is, along with other kinds of people of faith. They believe different things, Buddhism, Taoism. But as Christians, we believe in God. And so there's a definite difference. As Christians, we would have no ability to really say that they are not evil, because the Bible speaks very clearly that if you do not believe in God, it's evil. Or not believing in God is evil. So that's why I always say communism is evil, and how people interpret that or whether that resonates with them is really up to them. But as a Christian, I feel it's totally accurate. I feel that I have to say that, and I do. Okay. Now, I don't go into whether they do some good things or whether they do some bad things as far as the communist China, because there's always things you can find that you can say, oh, that's a good thing, feeding the hungry, taking care of poor people. Those are good things. But from the standpoint of communism is evil, it's because they don't allow the system to accept Christ. Now, people who understand a little bit about China will say something like, "Oh, they have churches in China. They're state-run churches, and they have certain beliefs." For example, I've spoken and been in many of those churches in communist China. They do not believe that Jesus is the Son of God. They believe he was a good man who just did good things. That's what they have in their theories, and then they accept those churches and those pastors who agree with that. The people who do not agree with that, along with other things, like, for example, miracles, but if you do not agree with that, then you become the enemy. And that's totally biblical, because the devil is out to kill, steal, and destroy those who believe in Jesus and God as Christians. So I want to just say that's why I preface my comments about communism is evil. Now, if we take that approach, it's a very simple discussion. Will communist China go to war with America? Okay, or with any other nation? You have to understand that if it's evil, the purpose from Satan is to kill, steal, and destroy. Kill people, steal everything you can, and destroy the people, destroy the nations of the world. That's exactly what they do. Now, I've spent 30 years studying communist China, living there, studying it, speaking to leaders, reading as much as I can. I've also spent probably another 20 to 25 years studying communist Russia, including university study, including government work that I did. So I have a very good understanding of what communism is and what its purpose is. The communist China, if you understand those three tenets, kill, steal, and destroy, and that's from the Bible. If you understand those tenets, you understand what their end goal is. And you will look at their history since communism came into force, either in 1917 in Russia or in 1948, 49 in communist China. And you just look at their history. Have they killed people? Yes, I've had friends that have been killed by communist China leaders that putting them in prison to kill them, pastors, and just other people. So they've killed, there's no official estimate about that, but it could be, 60 million, 50 million, including starvation, because communist Russia also did that to the Ukraine back in quite a number of years ago, maybe in the 1940s or 1950s. They starved the people in Ukraine to death, and they did it intentionally. They took all the food and they destroyed it, or they took it to Russia and they let the people in Ukraine starve to death. So when you understand the killing part, you just look at their history, how that works. Okay. Then the next thing is to steal. They steal technology. They steal businesses. The communist government, Communist Party, because the Communist Party and the communist government are almost really the same. So they kill, they steal. And you just look, okay, if you look in communist Hong Kong, now communist Hong Kong, have they come in and stole there? Absolutely. They've come in and stole the businesses. They've closed the business down. They stole the land. All the land belongs, they say, to communist China themselves. They stole the private property. They come in and they've taken over the private property by depressing the prices there so that people from communist China could come in and buy it. And then the Hong Kong people everything of theirs has been stolen. So yes, they steal. And then the third one is destroy. Now, when you talk about destroy, that really gets into answering the question, will communist China go to war with America? Under that concept of what I just explained to you, destroying has to do with making it disappear. And it doesn't say America disappear, to kill, steal, and destroy. It says everybody disappear, everything disappear. So whether it's New Zealand, Australia, India, Vietnam, whatever nation it is, Japan, Philippines, that's their intent. And they may not say that, but if you listen very carefully to the speeches coming out of Communist China, Communist Hong Kong, they say that they plan to have world outreach, world reach. In some cases, that's called the Belt Road Initiative, where they go into different countries and they set up. They've gone in and they've given money, and then they've taken the land and the property back. They give it to nations that are impoverished, that can't pay it back, knowing full well that within 5 or 10 years, they'll be able to put a naval port there. Whereas before, it belonged to the people of that nation. So that's very common. It could be the islands of the Pacific. Now they're trying to work into South America and even Central America. So that's their long-term goal. The difference between communist Russia and communist China was communist Russia, they didn't set up where they would be financially independent within their boundaries. They relied upon other nations giving them money to survive, and then they spent all their money on defense arms and the security apparatus. So they had no internal economy. It was always coming from the outside into Russia to keep it going. And President Reagan in the early 1980s of the U.S., he understood that. So he just basically waited them out, and he made them spend all their money on defense, that little money that they had. Russia, communist China is different. And I was there during that time, and I recognized it a long time ago. I saw them develop, because I was there close to 30 years. I saw them develop an internal economy. First, they developed money coming in back and forth, money coming into communist China, primarily from the U.S. And the U.S. is going to be responsible for the future of making those decisions. So they had all this money coming in, and then they could use it to build arms, to develop the evil plans that they have with other nations. And at the same time, they set up an internal economy in communist China, whereas if the money was not coming in, if America stopped the money at some point coming in, or Germany, whatever country it was, they could do fine. And I was there when they reached that point. I could see it right in front of my eyes, because the grocery stores were empty. They were like the Soviet era grocery stores from the 60s and 70s and before, 1960s. And they were empty. They were just nothing there except maybe a few items, and that was it. And then I started to slowly see where locally they were producing their own goods, electronics, food, and they were stocking their shelves. So at that point, I knew immediately that the outside world could not really influence them, because they had the ability to produce their own goods and supply their own people. And so you had the money coming in, which is still going in to communist China. And then you had the internal economy. So it was a lot different than communist Russia, which only had one of them, the money coming in. So I would say we have to understand their concept of what they want for the future and what they say. They said that many times they said that their intent is to destroy America in different ways. Financially, they plan to become the world's military leaders. They plan to do it financially. They haven't really come up. They've said that if there's a war, we have the ability to win the war. And so the bottom line is, will communist China go to war with Russia? I think if we take their own words, and I studied the psychological aspect of Chinese for a long time, and there is a difference between Taiwan Chinese, Hong Kong Chinese, and communist China Chinese, which I'm not going to go into now, but there's a difference psychologically, what they say and what they think. So communist China has the idea that they will go to war with America. They've said it, and especially they've said, if you interfere in our internal affairs, if you get involved with Taiwan, we will, that's the red line, we will fight you. Okay. Um, and America needs to understand that, and they need to begin to prepare. Now, it's not a matter of what America does, because America could have a concept of we are going to go ahead and stay out of it, or we're going to just protect Taiwan or protect Japan. It doesn't really matter what America thinks. It matters what Communist China leaders think. Their idea will be different than America. And what they do will not be dependent on America at all. So you need to understand that about Communist China. They have the ability to go to war with America. Okay. They're developing rapidly the weaponry to do so. And I've spent a lot of time studying it and talking to people who are really the world's leaders on this very subject. They have the ability to attack satellites, knock out satellites, make America become like the Stone Age, okay, because nothing would work with satellites. They have the ability, GPS wouldn't work, for example. Their missiles reach a longer distance than ours do. So if America's come, they would have no way to defend themselves because they'd be out of range to shoot their own missiles. And of course, nuclear, Armageddon would be terrible, because, it would just make everybody die, go back to the Stone Age. And so what's going to happen with Taiwan, or maybe there'll be some other incident like with Japan? I don't really know that. I think the focus would be Taiwan. And knowing the Chinese mentality as well as I know it, they will come in there, the communist China mentality, they will come in and they will attack. I think that's going to happen. And then the question is, what is America going to do, or the other nations? America's trying to bring in allies alongside of them. Taiwan, they're trying to bring in Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Germany. Those are the primary ones. And also a little bit England, but not much with England. And they're trying to bring them in so that they have a force to face Communist China, whereas Communist China doesn't really have any allies at all except Russia. That's one that you have, and that's a powerful ally because of their nuclear capabilities. But America is using that strategy to face Communist China. I don't really have the answer to that. I do know that it's just best to prepare based upon Communist China saying that they intend to take back Taiwan, or it could be another mishap. It could be something like American planes flying over the sea outside of China or Japan, and they have an accident within a Chinese plane, which is just last week they were flying 20 meters or 20 feet. 20 meters or 20 yards away from an American military plane. They could have an accident, and that could start a war. So I would just say, will Communist China go to war with America? My answer to that is yes. Okay. Will America go to war with Communist China? Well, it's kind of a redundant question, because if Communist China is going to go to war with America and other nations, such as New Zealand, who are drawn into it, Japan, there's no reason to answer that question. Will America go to war? Because they'll be forced to go into war. And so we'll just have to see. And now the generals of the U.S. are saying that this is something they expect to happen in 2025. That's only 2 years from now. Now, they don't have all the answers, because I've spoken to those 4-star generals, some of them, okay? They don't really know the answer to that, but they have their own opinion, and of course, they're knowledgeable about what they're talking about. The difference is I know the Chinese mentality very well, the Communist China mentality, and that's the part that they have to factor into their thought process, okay? And I think they're right. The ones who are saying to be prepared for war are absolutely correct, because they've accepted the Communist China people want to conquer and want to kill, steal, and destroy. So that's my concept, and I hope you've appreciated this. It's a very important thing, because we in the free world, we don't want to see our way of life destroyed, especially with a war. And World War II was very terrible for people in the world, all over the world. They suffered greatly, even if they didn't die. And we don't want that. No one wants that. But at the same time, will the communist China brutalize their own people by having a brutal government? The answer to that is yes, because they have that now in many different ways. You don't have freedom of speech in communist China, for example. So will communist China then go outside of their own land? I think the answer to that is yes. And it may not be on the other side of the world. It may be just on their side of the world, but it will definitely be taking place. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I've done the best I could to explain it to you. And, if you have any comments, feel free to make a comment, listen through it a little bit and think about it. Prepare yourself individually. If there is a war, prepare yourself. If you're at that age where you would have to go to war, you're in the military, prepare yourself with food and water, and that you may have to leave to go fight. So, or they may come to your shores to fight. Believe me, that is entirely possible. So take care, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed this time, and thank you for letting me come into your life and speak a little bit. Take care.